Chapter 1. The bright light emanating from the chandelier hit the sleeping guy straight in the eyes. In his sleep, he heard someone asking why he was still sleeping, and how he could be such a slob, and said that he sometimes admired such frivolity. Hearing him, Lin Si opened his eyes, rubbing his head, which was buzzing from the bright light. Having not yet fully come to his senses, he was surprised to find that he was sitting in an incomprehensible place, opposite some person. It was Chen Hai, the artistic director of Xingyuan Media, who suggested that if he wanted, he could simply sign and terminate the contract. And handing him the contract, he said that if he was not a decent person, then he would help him become decent. Lin Si turned his head and took the offered papers, still not understanding what this man wanted, who continued by saying that the company originally wanted to give him a chance because of Zhao Ximen's good reputation, but now he thinks it was a mistake. The guy began to silently look at the papers, not paying attention to his words, still not understanding why Zhao Ximen. After throwing the ash off his cigarette, Chen Hai stood up, saying that they had nothing more to talk about. And in the evening, he will need to prepare to record Su Li's track for the National Young Talent Competition. And Lin Si will not be able to ruin his career. Walking to the door and opening it, he remembered something, turned around and rudely said that it was better for Lin Si to stay away from Zhao Ximen. As for him, he doesn't see the point in recording his track, so he better leave before he kicks him out of there. The guy said wearily that a new name had appeared again, and there was no end to it. With shouts for him to deal with everything himself, Chen Hai finally left the apartment, not forgetting to loudly slam the door. The guy exhaled and closed his eyes, complaining that he had to endure this again. He was about to relax, when suddenly he opened his eyes in shock, realizing that he still didn't understand who he was. This world is similar to Earth, but it is completely different. In this world, there is a different sense of space and time, as well as other works of art. His name is Lin Si, and he is a failed singer. And the man with the cigarette is Chen Hai. He is the artistic director of Xingyuan Media. The Zhao Ximen he was talking about is Lin Si's girlfriend, or rather, ex-girlfriend. Su Li is the newcomer that the company wants to promote, and he has completely replaced Lin Si, whether in love or career. At the beginning, Lin Si worked hard, singing in bars, to save up money for Zhao Ximen to enroll in Lujiang Music Academy. But in the end, he was abandoned, one might even say expelled. Lin Si noticed with an awkward laugh that this guy really was a loser, just like him. And then he got up and headed for the exit, saying that it doesn't matter, he still can't stay there any longer, and he needs to find another place. Approaching the door, he said that since in a new life, he needs to play by new rules, then in this case, he cannot return to the music industry. Noticing Su Li and Zhao Ximen in the corridor, he hurriedly left from there, ignoring them and telling himself to forget everything because it was all over. Looking after him, Su Li noticed that this Lin Si had finally left, and he didn't understand how he got into the company at all. Simon, who was holding his hand, replied that who would know. Su Li told her to ignore him and asked if she was ready to go on stage today. Lin Si didn't hear any more, leaving the building with an indifferent expression on his face. He was surprised to find a girl with glasses standing opposite him with a black briefcase. It was Wu Li, Zhao Ximen's agent, who called him by name. He stopped, suspiciously asking what business she had with him. Wu Li, in response, handed the surprised guy a briefcase, saying that there were 100,000 in it, and she hoped that from this day on, he would forget everything that they had with Zhao Ximen. Joyfully taking the briefcase, he looked inside and asked whether this was really such a good deal, and the amount that was taken into account after taxes, thinking to himself that he actually doesn't remember anything anyway. The girl was surprised by his reaction and asked why he was so happy. Lin Si, not paying attention to her, being busy looking at the money, asked what was wrong with this, and if by any chance she expected a different reaction. She replied that she really expected a different reaction, but not wanting to develop this topic further, she transferred it, wanting to talk about the National Young Talent Competition. Suddenly, Lin Si interrupted her, firmly saying that he would take part in the competition, and there was no question of refusal. And then he turned to leave, indicating that the conversation was over for him, but not for the girl, who after him asked what he would perform with if the company had not prepared a song for him, and why he was so stubborn. In response, Lin Si simply waved his hand and left, telling Su Li not to worry about him. The decorated buildings, where the competition took place, literally screamed about its approach. Lin Si sat writing the song, thoughtfully resting his chin on his hand. He doesn't know when this brother will be able to return to his previous form, but he believes that he will not miss the chance to go on stage. He closed his eyes. He also needed to go to the stage to say goodbye to his past life. Remembering how Wali called him stubborn, he named his song that way, writing the word stubbornness on the sheet of paper, and thinking that he was really stubborn. The competition approached imperceptibly, and now he was already standing in front of the judges with a guitar in his hands, illuminated by the spotlights, little by little starting to play. One of the judges turned to the other, who was holding the lyrics, saying that he had never heard of this song, and asked if he had composed it himself. The second judge only said that the song was not bad, and there was still something in it. The guy, meanwhile, began to sing. The first lines of his song were about the fact that although he is different from this world, he hopes that they will allow him to be different, because perseverance is how he copes with cruelty. The audience listening to him caught fire with interest. They said with joyful surprise that the song was not bad and interesting. Zhao Simon asked in surprise how he composed it. Chen Hai told the annoyed Wu Lei not to panic because it doesn't make sense. Only the first 2 sentences are good, but the remaining 80% of the text will be complete nonsense. Despite this, his expression showed uncertainty in his words. The guy, meanwhile, continued to calmly sing that if he compromises with himself and lies to himself, even if others forgive him, he will not be able to forgive himself. The judges listened to him in amazement, enjoying the well-written text, which conveyed explosive energy. Lin Si began to sing more aggressively, moving on to lines about how he decides his own destiny and determines his place in life, his fingers moving quickly along the strings of the guitar with precision, and his stern, firm gaze directed towards the audience. He suddenly swung his hand and slammed the guitar onto the floor with all his strength, breaking it into small pieces, his expression blank. The audience was shocked by his action. They silently stared at him with wide eyes. Lin Si, meanwhile, walked towards the microphone, continuing to sing loudly and desperately to the music coming from the speakers. The lines said about him and his last stubbornness, that they need to hold on with both hands and never let go. The whole next stop is not heaven, and even if they are disappointed, then you shouldn't give up. The tempo and lyrics of this music, once again, lit up the audience with joyful shouts. The guy moved around the stage, looking straight at his audience, while continuing to sing the chorus of the song, and when he finally finished, he ran to the edge of the stage and jumped from it straight into the hands of the people standing near it, who joyfully picked him up, starting to throw him up. Lin Si felt truly happy at this moment, and the smile never left his face. Chapter 2. The crowd did not stop chanting his name joyfully, even as Lin Si walked back onto the stage, bowing before them with a slight smile. One of the judges, taking a microphone into the river, said that he was amazing. His singing was full of power and emotion, and he hasn't heard such a good song for a long time. It will undoubtedly become popular. The rest of the judges applauded him and began singing his song, and the crowd cheered for another performance of his song. His song had already spread around the internet, and now everyone supported and discussed him on online broadcasts and forums. Watching this from his phone, Su Li irritably asked where he could get such a song, which clearly only the best producer could write. One of the judges, taking the microphone with a smile, said that he was sure that the judges really wanted to ask him one question and ask permission to ask, is he an independent singer or does he have a contract? Lin Si replied that until this morning, he was a performer at Star Media, but before he went on stage, they terminated the contract. And with a smile, he noted that now he is on stage as an independent singer. Internet publics and broadcast chat exploded with discussions again. People did not understand how this could happen. The judge who asked said that he was really surprised and did not understand how the company could refuse a singer of such a level. Lin Si said nothing to this, thanking them for their time and appreciation of the song. However, the judges were still interested in this question. So another judge said that they had just learned that Star Media is ready to introduce a new singer, and asked if they could terminate his contract in order to support the new artist. The hall was filled with bewildered indignation. People were interested in who they were promoting and why, since no company would sacrifice such a singer for the sake of some newcomer, only if this newcomer was not God himself. And why don't the judges care where he came from? The guy wanted to answer, saying that he was not entirely sure. However, he quickly interrupted himself, saying that the song he wanted to sing was sung, and the stage on which he performed should also be vacated. Therefore, they should all just enjoy the following performances together. The host quickly introduced the next musician, Su Lei, from the same Star Media. Wu Li, who was standing in the corridor with Zhao Siman, said that Su Li couldn't bear it, so they should stop working between her and him for now. Zhao Siman, looking gloomily towards the departing guy, said that this might not last long, because he does not intend to destroy Su Li, but Su Li will be destroyed because of him. Meanwhile, at the Star Office Media, General Manager Louis Changlong angrily threw the glass on the floor and jumped up loudly, slamming the table, calling Cheng Hai an idiot on the phone and blaspheming him in every possible way, asking what he was doing and why he terminated the contract, as if he had gone completely crazy. And without waiting for an answer, he continued to ask the frightened Cheng Hai, who told him to terminate the contract and abandon Lin Si. After all, his song will become a star, so he orders him to call him immediately, otherwise Cheng Hai will be in trouble. And, as if that wasn't enough, he called him a stupid pig and shouted at him to do it faster. Cheng Hai fearfully said that he understood and hung up, going in search of Lin Si. Su Li, on stage, began to perform, but after Leon Si, his performance seemed like a clown's performance to the audience, and they displeasedly chanted for him to get off the stage, and that they did not think that the company would exchange lines for someone like that. Internet publics and the chat broadcast of the performance again exploded with discussions, but this time with discussions about how bad he was, and how Lin Si could be exchanged for someone like him. Zhao Simon, reading this on her phone, ordered to contact the director and delete all their joint photos and videos as soon as possible, so that nothing connects them. Wu Li immediately took the phone, saying that she understood, and Su Li definitely had no chance. She would never have thought that Su Li was so bad. Lin Si exhaled heavily and said that he didn't know whether the guy was happy or not, but at least he was free. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him and turned to blankly ask what was wrong with Cheng Hai running towards him. Running up, he stopped in front of Lin Si with a bright smile and said that he had just talked with the company, and they were ready to offer a good contract. As he himself knows, the company plans to terminate the contract with him, but he sees how talented Lin Si is, so he entered into an agreement with the company, and they have high hopes for him. The guy answered with a smile that he couldn't remember much from this morning, but he definitely remembered the caustic words that he said to him. Cheng Hai replied that it was just a misunderstanding, and he doesn't have to worry. He promises that he will help him become incredibly popular. He only needs to agree and sign the contract, Then he will be guaranteed to receive 5,000 a month and will also become a third-level singer. Lin Si mockingly replied that this amount was easy to refuse, thinking to himself that 5,000 was really not enough. Cheng Hai did not give up trying to come to an agreement and replied that they could discuss everything, because he himself understands that they are not very rich now. Therefore, they will give him 8,000, and the share will be calculated separately. Lin Si said that there was nothing to discuss and turned to leave. Cheng Hai blocked his way, irritably ordering him to sing according to the contract, because it would be better for him and for everyone. He turned towards the road with a smile, raising a finger and admonishingly telling Cheng Hai that he must understand one thing when he asks for help, not to use an imperative tone. Then he ignored him. Now he doesn't like him either, so let him go back where he came from. After all, doesn't he think that Lin Si should go home and go to bed? With these words, he finally hailed a taxi and got into it, leaving Cheng Hai to stare after him in surprised disappointment. He had already gotten ready for bed and was lying in bed trying to fall asleep, when suddenly he heard some sound and shouted irritably in his direction that he was trying to sleep. But getting out of bed, he was surprised to find some girl in the house in a nightgown and with a mask on her face, and asked who she was. Chapter 3. It was Sang Ji, Lin Si's landlord. She irritably took off her shoes and told him not to pretend that he had lost his memory. He walked to the door and awkwardly rubbed his neck, saying that he didn't recognize Miss Sun because she was very charming. The girl sternly told him that she would still charge him for rent and went inside. The guy followed her. Sang Ji said that he owes her for 3 months. She came there every day to find him, and she asked if he was hiding something from her because he wouldn't believe it, but she had someone to throw out the door today. Sitting down on the sofa and crossing her legs, she asked why he was silent. The guy approached the briefcase and, opening it, asked to wait. She answered in bewilderment that she had already been waiting for 3 months, and if it had been dirty there, she would have kicked him out long ago. He approached the surprised Sang Ji and apologetically handed over a stack of money, saying that this was rent and she could count it if she wanted. She was still surprised and asked where he suddenly got so much money and whether he was going to move. He spread his hands with an awkward smile and asked what he was talking about. He was unemployed and already a free guy, and this money was her compensation. The girl asked if he really was left without a job and a girlfriend, and then noticed that he was so young, but already so unhappy. And without waiting for an answer, she stood up, saying that she had taken the payment so he could leave, and if he had problems with work, he could contact her. Sighing heavily, he tiredly sat down on the sofa, saying out loud that he didn't know what to do with his work. Suddenly, the girl called him again, and in response to his surprised question about what happened, she handed him a bag of food, saying that she didn't eat this kind of food herself, so he could take it. Without waiting for him to come and pick it up, she threw the bag on the table and left. Lin Si opened the package and looked into it, and said that at the very least, he would at least not die of hunger. After some time, he had already brewed instant noodles and was about to eat when he received a call on his phone, distracting him from eating. He took the phone with displeasure and, blowing on the noodles, asked what it was. When she said that she was at his house and he needed to go down so they could talk, he asked to talk on the phone because he was finally eating after a hard day, and he turned his head, looking out the window where the white car stood. The girl said that the conversation was still important, and she hoped that they would get along. As long as he agrees, she can let him date Xiao Simon. After all, she knows that she is not indifferent to him. At first she thought he wasn't right for her, but this song showed his potential. She, still sitting in the car, offered to help him develop and submit documents to the company to unite him with Eximon. Not hearing any response from him, Wu Li irritably asked if he could hear her at all. Lin Si, blowing on the noodles and throwing them into his mouth, calmly replied that he heard, but he had already spent those 100,000 yuan, so he could not help. Moreover, they are not even bound by a contract, so he does not know what to answer. The girl, who was already getting on her nerves with this whole conversation, told him not to be a child and to say what he thinks. He said that for him, everything is very simple. If a person is useless to him, he does not waste his time on him. To her enraged cry that he was very strange, Lin Si replied that this is their difference. He does everything for his own good, and weak-minded people will always find something to criticize. Calling this conversation pointless, he said goodbye and hung up. Wu Li turned to Eximon, asking if she wanted to talk to him, and saying that he would definitely listen to her. Simon thought for a while and told her to forget about it, and it was better to go back. Without answering anything, Wu Li looked in surprise at the phone where the working group was opened. In it, Louis Xianglong scolded Chang Hai for not being able to persuade Lin Si to sign the contract, and then ordered them to do anything to contact him and persuade him. Chang Hai asked in bewilderment what he could do in this situation, but never received an answer. Lin Si put the phone on the nightstand and plopped down on the bed with a heavy sigh, finally falling soundly asleep. He didn't manage to sleep for long. Even before the sun rose, he woke up again. I immediately sat down at the table and opened a website with vacancies on my laptop. Suddenly hearing a call from an unfamiliar number, he picked up the phone, gloomily asking who it was. The girl's melodious voice asked him if he was Mr. Lin Si. Without waiting for an answer, the girl said that she hoped that he was not busy and she could talk to him. Chapter 4. She was surprised by his words that he did not want to be a star. But quickly pulling herself together, she said with a smile that she wasn't forcing him to do anything. And he just wants to talk about cooperation, and there are many ways to cooperate. For example, his song is really good. Having said this, she got up from the bath and went to get dressed. The guy, still busy looking for vacancies, agreed after listening to her and asked to name the meeting place. When they finished talking, she sent him a message asking them to meet at a coffee shop on Mingshui Street. Having quickly dressed, Lin Si ran out into the street, being surprised to meet his landlord on the stairs, who apparently was also getting ready to go somewhere. She calmly asked where he was going so late. Lin Si replied with a smile that he would meet a friend and discuss work. Maybe he could earn a little more money. The girl with a sly smile approached the guy in surprise, reminding him that he had just refused the company's contract, and now he was going to discuss something at night. And she asked what this incredible thing was. He smiled awkwardly and thought that she had appeared at the wrong time, and out loud, stuttering a little, said that it was a little difficult for him to talk about it. She put her hand to her mouth with exaggerated surprise, saying that he was still young and he shouldn't do such things. Because she heard that it would be difficult to stop, you just have to try once and… Lin Si interrupted her, shouting loudly that she had understood everything wrong. After some time, he finally approached the coffee shop and looked at the sign, trying to figure out if this was the right coffee shop. Suddenly his attention was attracted by a girl with glasses and red hair. She waved her hand and said, "What's here?" Having found a table, they sat down at it. The girl asked permission to introduce herself and handed Lin Si a business card and said hello that her name was Fang Jin. She was the director of the Xin Huang Entertainment Company, and she really liked his song. Having finished with the formalities, she asked why he said on the phone that he did not want to be a star. Lin Si, without raising his eyes from the business card, replied indifferently that there was nothing special about it, and he simply didn't like it, because he is used to being simple and not standing out. The girl picked up a cup of coffee and said that just one of his songs would be enough to make him rich, and she suggested getting to the point, asking if he wanted to sell the copyright to his song. He replied that he did not want to sell and offered to license it. She responded by saying that this could be done with the current popularity and level of the song. The price would not be low, but since he is a beginner, the price. Lin Si interrupted her, saying that he agreed so that she would not delay. And he took a sip from his mug. The girl began to say that there are two ways of legal redemption. The first redemption, the allowed price of which is 300,000 yuan for the first sale, and the rest will have nothing to do with it. And the second ransom, where they are guaranteed to give 50,000 yuan and 50% of the next sales of the song. The guy firmly said that he was choosing the second option, but he was guaranteed to receive 100,000 yuan and not 50. Fang Jin quickly agreed, noting that this was their first deal, and she hoped that they would work well together. Lin Si agreed with a smile and extended his hand to her, which she immediately shook firmly. After some time, there was already a contract on the table. After looking at it, Lin Si said that everything was in order and suited him. He just needed to change the price. The girl was about to leave, so she got up and said that before 10 o'clock tomorrow, the money would be transferred to him, and the company will immediately begin selling his song Stubborn, and he can always turn to her for sales data. He didn't answer anything, just smiled at her words and a good deal. Turning to him, she said that it would be great if he joined Shenhuang Entertainment Company. Lin Si gloomily replied that he had already said that he did not want to be a star. Fang Jin agreed with his words and said that their company has not only singers and artists. If he does not want to be a singer, let him become a producer after all. Since he worked in the entertainment industry, he should know that singers do not play the main role. The one who controls them is much more important. They said the last phrase in unison, with almost identical smiles. Chapter 5. The girl continued saying that in this circle, behind the scenes, there is an uncrowned king who controls everything. He replied with a smile that it sounded tempting, and he thought he could try it. They shook hands again. Jean said that she hoped that he would come to their company to discuss the remaining details, and for this she would send him the address. Thanking him for coming, the two of them left the coffee shop. Suddenly, a street musician caught their attention, and they stopped to listen to him. The girl noted with admiration that this song would definitely be popular. After some time, Lin Si drove up to his house and walked out of it towards the door, when suddenly, someone's female voice called him. He turned around, surprised to recognize Miss Sun, who looked very drunk. He was still surprised and asked how much she drank. The girl with a drunken smile pressed herself against the shocked guy and said that she had only drunk a little and asked him to help her. But she didn't have time to say what, and losing strength, closing her eyes, she leaned completely on him. Lin Si still caught her in shock, asking if she was okay. She asked to be taken home. Lin Si, leading her by the waist to the apartment, said that she was already at home. But he immediately noticed that she had already fallen asleep on his shoulder, so she could not answer. And he frowned, grumbling about how much she had drunk, and began rummaging through her bag for her keys. Having found them, he took her into the apartment and put her under the blanket, saying that if everything was okay, he would go back. And looking at her, into the emptiness of the room, he asked what was so good about alcohol. He had already turned to leave when the girl began to complain that she was hot. To which he said that it didn't matter, and she was wearing clothes, so she wouldn't freeze. But the sound of vomiting made him stop and freeze. He carefully turned towards the bed, which now had a puddle on it. And realizing that it was better for him to stay, he went up to the girl and took her to the bucket and, knocking on her back, waited until the contents of her stomach finally ran out, irritably asking what was wrong with her. After that, he wiped her face and told her not to worry, because he would close her eyes. With his eyes closed, he undressed her and put her on the blanket, wrapping her in it. And then I put the sheet in the washing machine. And finally he walked to the exit, turning for the last time to the girl who, half asleep, asked him not to leave. Hearing this, he closed the door with a smile, telling her to rest a little. After some time, he sat at his laptop, looking through the popular searches recently. The top requests included requests about his song, the newcomer of the nation project, and his scandal. Having opened the discussion with the first article that came across that Star Media, denies that they fired Lin Si for a newcomer. He noticed that everyone condemns the Star Company media and praise his song. On one of the posts, the user wrote about the newcomer of the nation, an official statement regarding that scandal, on the presentation of the newcomer to the nation, that their team did not know about it. The goal of the nation's newcomer is to find talent and give them the opportunity to show themselves on stage. In addition, the team never made or participated in any decisions of artists or companies, and they hope for their understanding. After reading this, Lin Si exhaled and said wearily that this is difficult. Suddenly, his attention was attracted by the ringing of the phone. The phone number was unfamiliar to him. Chapter 6. Lin Si woke up at dawn, yawned deliciously, and stretched out his hand and touched someone's leg. The dream suddenly vanished. He jumped up when he saw Miss Sun standing over him with folded hands, frightenedly asking how she ended up there. He twirled the keys in her hands and said dissatisfiedly that with the help of the keys, and as differently as possible, he indignantly asked what she did with the keys to his house. The girl replied that she was his householder, and it would be strange if she was without a key. For some time, they silently glared at each other, and then she still displeasedly asked if he did something to her last night. He waved his hands negatively and said that there was no way. He just took her home and helped her clean up. Hearing this, she calmed down a little and thanked him, but said that she still shouldn't have helped her. And she asked what he would do next and if he needed help with his work. Lin Si scratched his head and replied that he was not needed because he had already agreed with the company. Hearing him, the girl went to the exit, saying that in this case, she would go and get some more sleep. After some time, he approached the company building and called the director to say that he had already arrived. She asked him to wait because she was coming down now. And approaching him with a smile, she noticed that he had arrived early, and she offered to get up and wait until she put her finances in order and gave him the amount. They entered the building, and while they were waiting for the elevator, the director decided to tell him that the 16th and 17th floors belong to poets, and that is where he will work in the future. And she asked if he really didn't want to be a star, because with such talent, he was guaranteed a happy life. Therefore, if he wants a contract with them, she will provide him with the best conditions. The elevator announced that they had arrived on the 16th floor. Lin Si told her not to even hope for it, because he didn't like life without personal space. Thinking to himself that he had already suffered through everything, the girl led him down the corridor, showing him their office, where he could sit if he wanted to work for them. Since creativity requires inspiration, they have a flexible work schedule. Then she showed him the restroom. No one will mind if he plays or sleeps. The main thing is to do his job. Lin Si asked how the salary would be calculated. The director replied that the permanent salary is 10,000. The rest is a share from the sale of songs. When she first joined the company, she received 10% of each song. The guy asked in surprise why there was so little. The girl replied that she could not do anything, because in addition to her, she also needed to pay the producer, singer, and other people. But this is not forever. When he becomes a composer, the percentage will increase. With a smile, she continued, if he becomes the king of songs, it is possible that he will receive 100%. The king of songs is the man in control, the uncrowned king behind the scenes. He replied that he understood, and he asked how he could become a king. The director replied that it was as simple as elementary school mathematics. If 5 songs make it to the monthly QQ list music, he becomes a senior composer. And to become king, he must come up with at least 3 classic songs, and then the public will decide. Following this conversation, they approached her office. Holding the handle, she turned to him and asked if he had any questions. He replied that there were no questions and everything was very clear. After they signed the contract, The director asked everyone to remain silent and introduced them to their new partner, asking them to love and favor them. Everyone clapped and greeted him warmly. The director pointed to Lin Si's workplace, saying that now he will work there, and if he needs anything, he can just write. He was sitting at his desk when suddenly he heard a conversation between two girls discussing the ranking of the nation's newcomer during their lunch break. The girl in the pink skirt said that she heard that the person in 10th place immediately left the group, and her colleague replied that she was watching the news, and she liked this song Stubborn so much that she listened to it on repeat, and she was very interested in who wrote it. Unwittingly listening to their conversation, the guy immediately sank, realizing that he had become popular without even wanting it. Chapter 7. The girls continued to discuss this song and the situation. The girl in the pink skirt said that she would give years of work for such a deal. Her colleague in a yellow sundress replied that she could only dream. Anyone would like to exchange 100,000 for a couple of million. She heard that because of this situation, people from Star Media is in trouble. The girl in the pink skirt laughed, noting that this is not surprising. They lost such a contract, and their boss is probably very angry. Turning her head towards the guy in the red sweater, the girl in the yellow sundress turned to him, saying that he looked very familiar. The guy shook his head nervously, asking why his face was familiar to them. The girl glared at him. Lin Si, in turn, tried not to look in her direction, tensely turning his head away in the hope that he would not be recognized. The girl turned away and, continuing to drink her coffee, told him to forget because she was unlikely to remember. Lin Si exhaled with relief and opened his phone, where the page of the nation's newcomer competition was displayed, in which his song took first place in the number of votes. One of the comments said that the song is stubborn, incredible, and he wants to hear Lin Si sing it again. Therefore, the program must bring him back. He does not want to watch the next show without Lin Si. Who the hell is Su Li? He doesn't deserve to be popular. As if by magic, the phone rang with an incoming call from the nation's rookie competition. The guy calmly looked at the phone and, without saying anything, left the workplace, leaving the still talking girls behind him and answering the call. The person who called him asked Lin Si if he was. Lin Si replied that it was him. Then the man awkwardly asked him to continue participating in their program. The guy gloomily asked if they had forgotten that he was no longer under contract with the Star Media. The man replied that he knew about this, but Lin Si could return to the stage and continue as an independent musician. And Lin Si interrupted him, firmly saying no, and that he did not want to change anything. Not wanting to listen to anything else, he hung up, and he returned to the office, where the director met him, and, walking past him to the exit, she called him to go with her to the meeting room. A girl in a pink skirt asked her colleague if he was really called into the meeting room. She didn't answer anything, saying that he should keep his mouth shut so as not to be scolded. The girl in the pink skirt replied that it would indeed be better for him because the boss had been very angry lately. Ki Yuan said that she doesn't know what Director Fang is thinking when she calls him for a newcomer. With this, she sends him to certain death. A girl in a pink skirt, with a perky smile, putting her hand under her chin, asked her what was the matter and why she was so worried about him. Ki Yuan responded by asking if this guy was her type. She answered with a sly smile that not only she could like guys, and rightly so, with his appearance it is not surprising that she liked him. Although he looked poor, his first song hasn't come out yet, but people around him are already excited about him. Meanwhile, in the meeting room, where the director and Lin Si entered, composers were sitting at the table, being furiously scolded by the boss. He slammed the table, shouting that each of them was a composer, and usually he turned a blind eye to their tardiness or absenteeism. But now he only asks them to do a little work, and they bring him some kind of garbage. They've had a month to write a theme song, and they still haven't done anything. He asked them that maybe they didn't want to work there. After all, if they can't do it, then let them get the hell out. They're really short of toilet cleaners right now, so let them go and clean the crap out of their brains. The composers, sitting behind their gadgets, listened to him in fear. In the end, no one dared to answer. He turned his gaze to those who entered, greeting Director Fang, and asking if this was the same talented boy. She replied that it was him, and he had just joined them. She took him to see how they worked. The boss responded by offering to test him and ordering the place to be prepared. And then he turned to the composers again, saying that they are the elite, the only ones on the 16th floor, and cannot cope with this work. He thinks that it's not because they don't know how to write, that's not the point at all, but that they don't take it seriously. And then he loudly announced that from now on, until they do something practical, no one will leave this room. Lin Si, meanwhile, sat down in his seat and asked the composer sitting next to him what song they should write. He replied that Zhao Funchkin made a film about love and asked them to write a theme song for it. Their group wrote a bunch of songs, but the boss didn't like any of them. Another composer sitting to the left of Lin Si attracted attention and said that he thought it was because he was just very picky and didn't know what he wanted to hear. The price is only 300,000 yuan, but he wants them to write something at the level of the king of songs. The composer with glasses said that despite this, they still have no choice, so it's better to write, today is the deadline. If they fail, the work will be given to them. Then their boss will lose face, but he really doesn't know what to write. Lin Si listened to him and looked at his distressed expression. The hall fell silent. Everyone was staring at their gadgets. Immersed in work, in this silence, only the tapping of fingers on the keys could be heard. Suddenly, an idea came to him, and with a smile, he typed the name of the song into the keyboard, which sounded like those years. Chapter 8. After some time, Lin Si, having finished his work, closed the laptop. The boss, noticing this, loudly asked what happened, and couldn't he think of anything. And then he loudly ordered him to find the strength within himself and write him a song. Because he won't be polite to him just because she brought him there. The composer with glasses pushed him with his shoulder and whispered to him to pretend that he was writing, otherwise the boss would kill him. Lin Si replied with an indifferent expression that he had already finished. The boss asked in surprise whether he had finished writing, and the bespectacled composer turned to him just as surprised. This started to piss off the boss, and he asked if he really wrote the song in 5 minutes, and who was he even trying to fool. And then he leaned back on the chair, and without waiting for an answer, he said to forget about it, and when he sends him his song by mail, he can go. And no longer paying attention to the guy who left with a smile, he again irritably turned to the composers, asking what these pieces of garbage were doing, and ordered them to write their own song. Meanwhile, in the star meeting room, the media manager scolded Cheng Hai, saying that he was a useless moron, whom he asked to bring Lin Si to him. And where is he even now? He replied that he really tried, but he thought that this kid was not serious about his work. Manager Louis angrily replied that he was the one who didn't take his job seriously. After all, his song Stubborn is now at the very peak of popularity. People all over the internet are laughing at them. He heard that their Apernix have already completed their tasks. And all because of his idiotic act. How could it be possible to end the contract with Lin Si right in front of the nation's newcomer? Addressing everyone in the room, he called them all helpless. Cheng Hai apologized, saying that he was really to blame. But the manager, unable to hear his stuttering, asked what but. Cheng Hai continued by revealing that they originally wanted to talk about Su Li and Eximon's relationship on the nation's newcomer website and promote both of them at the same time. Lin Si was dating Eximon, so he thought there would be problems and terminated the contract. Contrary to his expectations, this only angered the manager. He shouted in his face that he was really stupid, and he asked why they were promoting Su Li, who in fact is no one. Ever since Lin Si's song became popular, and Lin Si himself came out as a newcomer. The nation has all lost interest in them, and he still wants to promote Su Li, as if he is his own father. Suddenly thinking of something, he turned to Wu Li, asking if Lin Si and Eximon were close. She replied that they were close, even very close. Having heard the answer, he ordered her to go and talk to him personally, and then personally bring him to him and send him to the newcomer of the nation. She wanted to ask something, but the manager didn't listen to her, turning to Cheng Hai and telling him to go and help them, and warning that if he does not return, then Cheng Hai may not think about any performances for about 6 months. Having said this, he loudly slammed the table, announcing the end of the meeting. After some time in Wu Li, I came to the Star Company office media. Simon, standing by the window with a cup in her hands, asked how the meeting went. Wu Li replied that Manager Lewis was completely desperate, and he hopes that she will bring Lin Si back. Simon thought for a moment, and then asked if Lin Si himself wanted to return. Wu Li said that who knows, but he had responded to her requests before. For her, he is ready to buy fashionable clothes and eat steamed buns. Wu Li smiled. He was such an obedient boy at that time, so let her give him a chance to run after her again. Simon, after thinking, replied that it was worth a try. In the Shenghuang entertainment meeting room, the boss was tearing up and throwing again, shouting that all this was trash and no good. Lin Si looked at him in surprise, looking up from his papers. The boss looked at the computer screen and shouted angrily, asking what the hell this was. Hearing him, the director came in asking what happened and why he was so angry. Chapter 9. The boss shouted that again, everything they wrote was garbage, and he didn't even want to continue reading. Apparently, they really want the work to be given to the 17th floor. The director ignored his words and calmly asked how Lin Si coped. At first, he didn't understand who she was talking about, but quickly realized he asked if this was the guy she brought. And without waiting for an answer, he said that he made the song in 5 minutes, literally. He doesn't even want to look at such crap. Who is he even trying to fool? The director was surprised to note that 5 minutes is really very fast. And she asked that maybe the guy really wrote a good song. The boss raised his hand, irritably telling him to forget about it, because he was too lazy, and would just send everything to Zhao and let him choose what he wanted. It's still impossible to find gold by digging through shit. The director, looking at the boss who was smoking, said that she could not help, because Zhao Dao demands a lot. The boss didn't answer, taking a drag and leaning back in his chair with a tired exhalation. Zhao Dao, meanwhile, nervously smoked cigarettes, having probably smoked a whole pack. He irritably read the songs sent to him, calling them crap, with words about how meticulous they were, and there was nothing new in them. Tapping on the laptop, he indignantly asked if they even went to school or college. His assistants looked intensely at the monitor, and then told him to just forget and choose something, because they still need to make a film, so the song is not very important right now. Zhao Dao turned to him, angrily shouting that he was a moron who did not understand that for a good film, you need a good song. The film is the body, and the song is its soul. Did he waste so much time and nerves on these songs? He needed people, if they heard this song anywhere, to immediately remember their film. They have a great idea for a film, but then why does Shen Huang write such horror? While flipping through the songs, he came across a song called Those Years, from an author under the name Lin Si. The lines of this song spoke about the heavy rains and love missed in those years, and about the fact that he so wants to hug her and gain lost courage. Director Zhao was lost in thought, thinking about the love story that I wanted to describe in the film, about a guy who couldn't muster up the courage to confess his love to the girl he liked. Chapter 10. The boss shouted that again, everything they wrote was garbage, and he didn't even want to continue reading. Apparently, they really want the work to be given to the 17th floor. The director ignored his words and calmly asked how Lin Si coped. At first, He didn't understand who she was talking about, but quickly realized he asked if this was the guy she brought. And without waiting for an answer, he said that he made the song in 5 minutes, literally. He doesn't even want to look at such crap. Who is he even trying to fool? The director was surprised to note that 5 minutes is really very fast. And she asked that maybe the guy really wrote a good song. The boss raised his hand, irritably telling him to forget about it, because he was too lazy and would just send everything to Zhao and let him choose what he wanted. It's still impossible to find gold by digging through shit. The director, looking at the boss who was smoking, said that she could not help because Zhao Dao demands a lot. The boss didn't answer, taking a drag and leaning back in his chair with a tired exhalation. Zhao Dao, meanwhile, nervously smoked cigarettes, having probably smoked a whole pack. He irritably read the songs sent to him, calling them crap, with words about how meticulous they were, and there was nothing new in them. Tapping on the laptop, he indignantly asked if they even went to school or college. His assistants looked intensely at the monitor, and then told him to just forget and choose something, because they still need to make a film, so the song is not very important right now. Zhao Dao turned to him, angrily shouting that he was a moron who did not understand that for a good film, you need a good song. The film is the body, and the song is its soul. Did he waste so much time and nerves on these songs? He needed people, if they heard this song anywhere, to immediately remember their film. They have a great idea for a film, but then why does Shen Huang write such horror? While flipping through the songs, he came across a song called Those Years, from an author under the name Lin Si. The lines of this song spoke about the heavy rains and love missed in those years, and about the fact that he so wants to hug her and gain lost courage. Director Zhao was lost in thought, thinking about the love story that I wanted to describe in the film, about a guy who couldn't muster up the courage to confess his love to the girl he liked at school. He was so inspired by the song and the story that he couldn't hold back the tears that were now streaming down his face. Seeing this, his red-jacketed assistant excitedly asked him not to take on so much. If he can't find the right song, they'll almost come up with one. The assistant in the green t-shirt confirmed his words, saying that what he said was true, and asked Director Zhao what they would do if he felt sick from anger. Director Zhao covered his face with his hands and asked irritably that they thought he might get sick from anger. And removing his hands from his face, he shouted with enthusiasm that they would stop wasting their time because he had already found the song, and they better come and have a look. They approached him, looking into the laptop of the pleased director, and they immediately noted that the lyrics are really good and this song looks promising. The assistant in the red jacket said that, although they don't have a melody yet, the test of this song looks much better than all the others. The guy in the green jacket said with reverence that there really was something in this. The text is so atmospheric that he really felt the warmth and beauty of his student years. The director quickly agreed with them and said that this song fits perfectly with their film. He thinks it will not just be a hit, but a classic for all generations. Therefore, he will immediately call Shen Huang to say that he is taking this song. With these words, he jumped up from the couch and dialed a number on the phone. Meanwhile, in the Shen Huang Entertainment Company, on the 16th floor in the director's office, the boss was still sitting, looking out the window, smoking, saying that they were all idiots. Hearing the ringing tone of the phone, he thought it was Zhao calling him, but when he took the phone, he heard the voice of his child, who asked him when he was going home, because his mother had prepared chicken wings that he wanted to eat with him. The child once again asked him to return home quickly. He replied with a smile that he would come home soon. Chapter 10. After some time, the boss left the company building and was already driving through the dark streets of the city at night, illuminated only by the light of lanterns and house windows. Suddenly his phone rang. This time, it was Director Zhao. The boss exhaled and said that he had finally called him, and without delay, he answered the call. After greeting him, he asked if Director Zhao was calling because he didn't like the songs. And then he began to make excuses, telling him not to worry, because they themselves realize that their current work does not quite meet his requirements. But let him be sure that his colleagues. He interrupted, asking in shock what he said and whether he was serious. He pressed the brake pedal to the floor, slowing the car. And not paying attention to the drivers passing by who were sending him, he joyfully asked if he really liked any of their songs. Director Zhao replied with a smile that of course he liked it, and he would not deceive them. But this time, he would like to personally thank him, Director Wu. Without him, he would hardly have been able to find such a good song. He laughed and asked when he could prepare the full version for him. Director Wu quickly replied that he thought it was tomorrow, because tomorrow he would tell someone to prepare it, record it and send it to him. Director Zhao looked at his watch and said that in that case, great, and he will wait. And then, stumbling a little, he reminded him that they didn't get along with him a little and said all sorts of things to each other. And he said that he hoped that he didn't take this skirmish to heart. After all, they all just want to do their job. And asked if he agreed with this. He replied that Director Wu was right. And he asked which song he liked. Director Zhao said that he liked the song those years. And to be honest, he always believed in Director Wu, and he knew that he would never disappoint him. This song is really well written. And he liked it very much. With these words, he laughed again. Hearing it, Director Wu was shocked to remember who wrote this song and how. And he considered it his duty to awkwardly ask whether Director Zhao was really confident in his choice of this particular song. After all, it was written in only 5 minutes. Director Zhao interrupted him, saying that it didn't matter to him that 5 minutes or more were spent on writing this song. What is more important, what emotions she aroused in him. And in all respects, she corresponds to the one he wants to see in the film. Arriving at the house, he got out of the car and stood in front of the house, still not understanding whether he was in his right mind or whether he was sleeping, and hit himself in the face. Feeling pain, he rubbed his neck, saying that he was not sleeping and this was definitely not a dream. And then he dialed Fang Jin. At that time, she was in the gym, working out on the treadmill, when suddenly she heard his call. Fang Jin stopped walking in surprise and picked up the phone, greeting Director Wu. He asked what kind of person she brought. She picked up a bottle of water and asked if he wanted to know who he was. Director Wu said that Director Zhao chose the song for his film, and it was written by the man she brought today. She asked tiredly, "Isn't that wonderful?" And she said that she would definitely contact him. Director Wu apologized for disturbing him and passed out before saying goodbye. After dialing Lin Si's number, she went to pack her bag. He immediately answered and said hello. She got straight to the point, saying she had good news. Director Zhao liked his song. He only calmly replied that he understood. The director asked why he answered so calmly and shouldn't he be happy. He explained that if Director Zhao had chosen a song other than his, he would have been a real idiot. And saying that he was at home, he said goodbye and hung up. Walking into the shower, she said with a smile into the emptiness of the bath that she didn't know whether he had arrogance or self-confidence, but she still picked up the treasure. And she got into a hot shower, washing off the sweat after a hard workout. Chapter 11. Lin Si smiled as he selected the best vegetables and products from the store, happily anticipating the celebration of his successful work. After paying for the groceries, he headed home, and when he got there, he knocked on Miss Song's door. She was doing yoga at that time and was not expecting anyone to visit, so surprised, she interrupted her workout and, taking a towel, opened the door for him. Asking what happened, he showed her bags of groceries with a smile, saying that things were going well at his work. So he bought all sorts of food to celebrate and came to her. She replied with a smile that it was good, and let him go get ready while she goes to the shower. And she went into the shower, standing under the stream of hot water, completely immersed in bathing. Lin Si, who was washing dishes, heard the doorbell and thought that Miss Song had quickly bathed and came. But when he opened the door, he was surprised to find Simin and asked why she had come. She responded by asking if he didn't invite her. He did not answer, and leaving the aisle, invited her to enter. Zimin took off her sunglasses and said that she never thought she would end up there again. Lin Si handed her a mug and said that she was right in thinking, because when he rented this house, it had already gone to the nation's newcomer. She took the mug, and after drinking from it, she replied that at that time she really wanted to help him. But since the competition had already begun, she had no other choice, so let him forgive her for this. He said that this is already in the past, so she should forget it, because he doesn't even remember yesterday. And he went to the closet, and with the words that, judging by his memories, these are her things, he took out a toy figure of the attraction and put it in front of her, telling her to take it with her since she came. She looked after him in surprise, and then drew attention to the toy, and with her fingers, she set in motion the mechanism that produced the melody. Simin remembered how he gave it to her on the first anniversary of their relationship, handing it over to her with the words that they had known each other for only a year. He wanted to give her a gift to commemorate this event. She shook her head, trying to push away these uninvited memories, and looked again at Lin Si, who was cooking. Simin Millet looked at him without saying a word. Having prepared the food and set the table, he asked if she would eat. She seemed to wake up from a dream and stood up from her seat, telling him that she actually didn't come there for food, and she needed him to do something for her. The guy, without turning around, indifferently replied that if this is something about returning to the company, then she can forget, even if he doesn't feel anything negative about this. After thinking a little, he asked that even if that was the case, why should he come back? She responded by asking him to do this thing for her, one last time. Lin Si replied that he had already said that he did not experience anything negative, but this did not mean that he was eager to return, and hoped that this time his answer sounded clear to her. The girl was upset by his answer, but decided not to give up on this and tried another tactic. And she stammered and said that she saw him cooking and thought about one thing. Isn't this the life they dreamed of? And he really wants to stop there anyway. The guy turned to her, saying that she should now consider him as a different person. That old Lin Si was too tired. Therefore, he decided to give him legal rest. She came close to him, and touching the chest of the surprised Lin Si, desperately asked if this was really the life he wanted. He replied with a smile that he always wanted to live like this. But before, in his head, there were only thoughts about how to make her life more beautiful. Suddenly, they both turned to the door in fear, hearing a loud knock, and then a subsequent cry that she had actually already finished taking a shower, so let them open the door for her. Chapter 12. Hearing her, Seaman turned to the guy and demanded to know who this girl was and who she was. Lin Si opened the door and dryly replied that it was the landlord. A girl in a red dress appeared at the door and said that from behind the door, she smelled the pleasant smell of cooked food, and if he loses his job, he can easily become a good cook. Lin Si awkwardly scratched his head and let her inside, saying that he was only cooking for himself, and if he was allowed into the kitchen, he would create chaos there and not really prepare anything. At his words, she only smiled mysteriously, and together with him went into the hall, where, noticing some girl, she asked in surprise why he didn't tell her about the guest. Lin Si awkwardly replied that she was just passing by and decided to go see him. Approaching the table, the girl sat down directly opposite Simon, who was looking intently at her with a frown. Without paying any attention to her mood, she asked with a smile if she was Lin Si's girlfriend. Lin Si, who came up with the main dish, firmly said that she was not his girlfriend. Hearing this, Simon closed her eyes sadly, but did not object. Miss X Singh, on the contrary, happily said that in this case, she was very lucky. Hearing her, Eximon told Lin Si that she remembered that she had to go to some errands, so she would not eat. Thanks and all that, but it's time for her to go. Lin Si did not stop her, calmly saying, "Okay." She was offended by his reaction and looked at him silently. And then she got up and, taking the toy from the table, without saying a word, quickly left the apartment, loudly slamming the door behind her. Looking at her, Miss Xing asked in surprise whether she had come at the wrong time. The guy waved it off, saying with a smile that everything was fine, and it would be better if they had already sat down to eat. It was only thanks to her that he was able to overcome difficulties and find himself in his current place. If it weren't for her, he would already be living on the street. She didn't answer anything, and after trying the food, she praised his cooking skills and said that the food was even tastier than in the restaurant. He accepted her compliments with a smile and told her to eat as much as she wanted, because he doesn't cook that often. Meanwhile, Simon was already approaching the car, and having sat down in it, I immediately heard a question from Wu Li, how everything went and whether he agreed. Simon replied that he did not agree. Wu Li sighed heavily and said that tomorrow they would expect a huge commotion from Manager Lewis. The girl did not answer, leaning back on the chair with a heavy sigh and closing her eyes. Suddenly, she remembered the image of Miss Xing that she had seen at Lin Si's place. Horrified by this, she opened her eyes wide with a loud curse. Wu Li asked her in surprise what happened. And then, without waiting for an answer, she irritably asked that Lin Si really took the opportunity and mocked her. If this is the case, all he needs to do is just say it without hesitation. And then she will ask her friends to bring him to light and press him. Simon asked incomprehensibly what she meant, and then hastened to refute her words, saying that this did not happen. She didn't understand why Lin Si couldn't win some serious matter for them. Even if he is a little popular, he is just a rookie who hasn't even debuted. And before that, he didn't do anything outstanding. Having said this, she asked if he really wrote that song. Wu Li replied that she understood how she felt, but she better take a look at it. She handed Simon the phone with the tab open. Simon didn't immediately understand what she meant, but as soon as she read the contents of the post, she couldn't help but be surprised. Chapter 13. This post said they had bad news. Lin Si will not participate in the next national rookie competition. They respect his choice. Talented people will shine no matter what, no matter where they are. They only wish Lin Si a bright future and hope that they will meet again. She said in surprise, still looking at the phone, that they apparently really wanted him back, and she asked why so many people were ready to fight for him. Wu Li, calmly, as if explaining to a child, answered that the whole point was in his song Stubborn. If Lin Si wants to return, he can use this opportunity to fly to the top. And his song is really good. Simon asked that if everything turns out like this, then she needs to try again. Wu Li briefly replied that it would only be if she wanted to. She will sing with him. Their collab will raise her to the peak of popularity. She asked confusedly what she meant. Wu Li said that she thought she didn't want to, so she'd better just forget about it, because she can't force her. Still not understanding anything, Simon asked what she should do then. Wu Li, gesturing actively, asked what she thought Lin Si would face when a couple of days passed and everyone calmed down. She asked if she meant that the company would then simply shut him up. Wu Li replied that of course it would be so. He is very popular now, and the company wants him. But when it becomes useless, she will change her priorities and quickly deal with him. The tougher the people who support him now, the harder he will fall in the future. She smiled slyly and said that talent alone is not enough for a person, so they should wait and see what happens in the future. Having eaten a hearty meal, Miss Eng was now sitting on the sofa, complaining that it was very hot there, and why didn't he just turn on the air conditioner so as not to sit in this heat? She'll die so soon. Lin Si looked up from washing the dishes and said that it was because the air conditioner was broken and had not yet been repaired. The girl, stretching, said what he would tell her. She is still his housekeeper and would take care of the air conditioning. But it's okay, she'll sort it out later. Thanking him for the food, she left, saying that it was very tasty. After some time, Lin Si was already on the subway, half asleep, getting to his place of work. In his sleep, he heard two girls discussing his song. The girl with glasses asked her friend if she had seen yesterday's message from the newcomer to the nation. Her friend replied that, of course she had heard about it. Stubborn is such a wonderful song. The author couldn't just leave the competition, something was absolutely wrong there. She asked if the singer had said that he wanted to leave. And her friend irritably asked if she really believed what the program would say. She thinks he was threatened because he is cute and sings well. The guy smiled at their words, and when the metro stopped, he hurried to get out, accidentally bumping into those two girls, who immediately irritably told him not to push. He only smiled awkwardly in response, admitting his guilt. After some time, he came to the office and was already standing in the elevator with a girl in a yellow sundress who was holding a glass of coffee with both hands. Deciding to break up the awkward silence, she asked with a smile whether Director Wu had sworn at him when he called, remembering how he shouted that it takes a month to write a theme song. But they have nothing ready at all, and they are completely out of hand. And he said that if they can't work, let them get out. They just need toilet cleaners, so let them go and clear their brains of shit. Lin Si said sadly that he was scolded. The girl replied that he was still a beginner, so he should try not to anger Director Wu. The director is always unbearable, especially now, so he better not make him angry, otherwise he will be fired. He thanked her for the reminder with a smile. The girl quickly responded to his gratitude and asked where he studied. He replied that at Chuncheng High School. She asked how he got there then, but noticing his facial expression, she understood how her words sounded. And then she excitedly apologized, saying that she didn't mean anything like that, she was just surprised. The guy answered with a smile that everything was fine. He was often absent from school and worked instead, mainly so that his ex could study at a music school. And then he was expelled. The girl asked in bewilderment what he was talking about. Chapter 14. But without waiting for an answer, she asked him that if Director Fan brought him, then he must be her relative. It was clear from his face that her guess was wrong, and he didn't really want to talk about it. She hurried to change the topic, with thoughts about how he got there, if not someone's relative, and what was hidden behind that sweet face. She said goodbye and offered to work hard in the future. The elevator had just reached the 16th floor and opened right in front of Director Wu, who was gloomily pacing along the corridor. The girl hurried to wish him a friendly good morning. Director Wu said nothing as he looked at her gloomily. But suddenly, Lin Si noticed with surprise, and his mood instantly changed. He approached him, joyfully greeting him. Lin Si, to the surprise of the girl in a yellow sundress, only dryly answered him good morning. He didn't pay attention, hugging the surprised guy by the shoulders in a friendly manner and inviting him to go with him because he had a conversation with him. The girl in the yellow sundress looked after them in surprise, not understanding what was happening. Director Wu was in a bad mood just now, but why was he so kind to the newcomer then? After a while, sitting at her desk, she told the girl in the pink skirt about this and asked if she thought it was strange. She frowned and replied that she had some idea about this. A girl in a yellow sundress asked which one. She said that about this guy. She said he was from high school and Vice Principal Fang brought him to them. It's really kind of suspicious. The girl in the yellow sundress objected, saying that perhaps they were just relatives. Meanwhile, Director Wu and Lin Si were already sitting in the office. Director Wu told him to come in, sit down, and asked in a friendly manner what he would drink. Tea or coffee? The guy, sitting on the sofa, said that just warm water would be enough. The director immediately handed him a cup of warm water. And he said that from the first meeting, he realized that he was an unusual guy. Sitting down on a chair next to the sofa, he continued to say that young people are good now, and he likes them. With a smile, he told Lin Si that director Zhao liked his song, but they only have the lyrics, so there are still some things to be completed. Director Zhao needs to record and send a song, so he wonders if the guy needs a senior composer. The guy gloomily replied that a composer was not needed because he could write a song later, and he asked if the singer would be chosen by them. The director replied that of course, and he would send him information about the singers later, and hopes that he will make the song as quickly as possible. That would be very nice. The guy agreed with his words with a smile. Director Wu, considering the conversation over, told him to come if any questions arose. Lin Si said that in this case, there is another problem. The one regarding the profit from his song. Director Wu said that he completely forgot to say that the contract price of the song is 300,000, and he will receive 30% of it. The guy coldly asked what it meant that he would receive only 90,000. Director Wu said that 90,000 is just a license fee for them, and if they dare to pay less, he will not agree to make a deal.